Well, it's time to talk about Leo Whitefang. Originally one of the Knights of the Holy Order of Illyria, Leo Whitefang fought in the Crusades. Eventually he was put in command over a troop of soldiers, and they only narrowly survived. And that's what the song Hellfire is about. He is very traumatized under that cool surface. Eventually he was also elected the second king of Illyria along with Kai Kisuke, who was the first king of Illyria. They have a very budding rivalry.
Stand with the fight! Your
But we should get to the song. Hello, everyone! This is David Leibowitz with Philosophy of Video Game Philosophy, and this theme, I did not realize how deep this theme is. Like, it is... So we just did Love the Subhuman Self, which was my number 2 favorite theme at launch. This is number 3, and I think it still remained around that area, because it slaps so hard. But neither way, Hellfire. Time for a little different thing going on. I'm a psych student, actually. I'm both psych and philosophy, but I've definitely been in psych for longer. I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I took a class on clinical psychology, and I definitely did the research on what diagnosis to give Leo Whitefang. Yes, obviously the song is not survivor's guilt, but I'm going to tell you exactly what is going on in the song that adds so many more rich layers of detail. Of course, I'm also a singer, so I will give you performance notes as well. I'm not as big in musical theory, so I can't give you exactly the stuff, but I still think that some musical details of the song are very interesting that I think I can unpack. All right, without further ado, Hellfire, Dark Fire. Wrong song. Let's go. A little nice classical sounding stuff going on, a little bit to the, a tiny riff in his first theme Schultz that has a nice little slight orchestral thing going on, adding to his kingliness. But let's get to the drama.
One morning, strangers say hello to me. Tomorrow their names will be carved on the stone. We're going home, and I'm a terrible liar. Forgive me, that's not the art of
So, this is the big part. So obviously we can see from this already, yes, the issue that's going on with him is survivor's guilt. Survivor's guilt is a part of PTSD. It is related also to the bigger thing I want to talk about, that is moral injury, moral trauma, also known from Aristotle's term akrasia, which is a little interesting. But the notion is, of course, he told people that they were going to come home, and they didn't. They died. But there's something else going on here, and we'll see the word liar, liar, liar come up many times. Because we see that it's not just that that people went away from him and that they died on his watch. He told them that they would be alive. That already is another moral infraction that adds to the moral trauma. So moral trauma, again, is something that is an action that traumatizes a person because they went against their higher conscience. And for this was what he believed was he blames himself for lying. He lied to people. And, yeah. Also, nice little sea shanty at the beginning. Just great note. I wake up one morning, signal sending up to me. Tomorrow's their grains will be carved out sown. We're going home and I'm a terrible liar. Forgive me, that's not the Arc de Triomphe. Like, it's the Arc de I was going to look it up, but I'm sure it's just like how Arc de Triomphe is how he gets to victory. I'm sure that's what it means. Continue.
Who dream of heaven. Those who dream of heaven never last very long. The running flash and dirty sky infect my wounds.
There we go. Those who dream of heaven never last very long. The bright flash and dirty sky infect my wounds. This is saying, so obviously, the rotting infect my wounds. These are not just physical wounds. These are psychological wounds. The rotting flesh, the obviously PTSD, seeing the death of his soldiers that he had command over, would definitely have repeating memories going forward and forward and forward. Now, what actually is Hellfire? It's not. There's two layers to this. One is literally it feels like hell. It's actually multiple layers. That's why I said that. That's why the title is about many layers. There is the layer that it literally is just hell to go through war. The World War I and World War II basically took away the myth of the just war. Because, of course, World War I was known as the Great War, but as time went on and it just turned into trench warfare, people started to realize that war was not glorious, which is reflected back in the Iliad and the Odyssey, where we see the leaders such as Achilles and Agamemnon and Odysseus show moral falter, and especially the story of Achilles as he gets further and further with his soldiers getting demolished, and his moral scruples just go away, and it leads to his death, his Achilles heel. And obviously, and then when Odysseus sees him in the Odyssey, when he's in the underworld, he talks to Achilles and is like, "I don't care about my life anymore." He's just done. He's just emo as all hell. He's just completely emo by then. So, like, war can, obviously, we know war can do things to people. That's obvious. But again, so we have the memories of the rotting flesh, Hellfire. It's hell to go through war. But it's also probably Hellfire literally talking about him sweating. Like, you are constantly on high anxiety, high alert. Hellfire not only is about, in this current day and age, Leo is kind of somewhat, he's trusting of Dr. Paradigm in XR, Dragon Gear, but he isn't quick to trust Emilia and Zato in Strive. So he does still, under his cool service, still see life as a war zone. And because of that, when you're constantly thinking like life is in a battle is in a battle, then you constantly feel like you are on. This was a nice little book that I took on. I took a course, fictional and nonfiction course on war, and there's a guy that like felt like he was in war when he was at a supermarket. This is a fictional story, but I'm sure it's real. Like, when you're back from home, you still feel like you're at war. Now, Leo is constantly facing world-ending threats, so he is constantly at war. But even when he's not, he just probably, there's some parts of him that's like, he's just irritable and high anxiety. And then there's also the notion that Hellfire is, of course, the loss of religion. That I don't know about Leo's religious consonance, and it seems like God basically is dead in this universe anyway. So, but a loss of spiritual foundation. Those who dream of heaven, you can't have heaven. I don't believe in heaven anymore because I've been through war. I've seen the rotting flesh and dirty sky, probably the smoking gas and all of that. That leads him to lose spiritual foundations as well.
I have a
We're going home alive, liar, liar, liar. This is like the notion in his head, the moral. You can hear that just over and over, like the flashing moments in his head. You can hear both while he's saying, like he's saying, we're going home alive, liar, liar, liar. It's just the notions ringing in his head, but also ringing in his head still to this day. Probably thinks that he's a liar, liar, liar.
Just get me out of this hell.
That's also his current state. He's still thinking, and when you're PTSD, you still feel like you're in this hell. You still feel like you are. It's not like he's just in. This is not just talking about when he's at war. He still feels like this to this day. Of that day, sake of that day. That's why. It's not just about back then, it's still how he feels. So, a nice little, the Middle Eastern / I think it's a Middle Eastern instrument. It's the sitar, I believe. The sitar playing is definitely, or in either Middle Eastern, is to definitely bring up the desert feel, because remind that a lot of current wars are fought in the Middle East, and therefore the desert feeling is just like the heat, but also just the sounds, the feelings of heat. The heat that's in is like, oh. And we'll see later on that there's some more musical sounds that reference water. So trying to get out of hell, just the water, of water, cold drop of water is all I need. We'll get to Rivers in the Desert for Persona 5, don't worry. That's why I have to go. So, basically we're seeing here, first the latter part is the water. Like you sort of scream at this, also like, it feels like he's drinking water. It's like, oh, he has a momentary, a break from the suffering, a break from all that. But then, my voice withered away, my limbs can't wings can't hear my command. Literally, there's what we call psychosomatic. When the mind, you can have physical issues when your mind is the cause. So obviously Leo's still fighting, so he does not actually have limb failure, and his voice is perfectly radiant and beautiful. Because Jamieson Price is amazing voice actor, yes. Basically, but at the time, my voice, so the voice, it definitely can probably drive your voice, and it can also psychosomatically cause limb failure, but also because he's under the weight. But I think there's also a psychological thing, like my limb, like literally when you're under so much tension and stress that you literally can't move your body, but you are still trying anyway. I'm just an ordinary soldier. There's two things to this. One is imposter syndrome, that I'm just an ordinary soldier. I'm not the king of Illyria. I'm not the commander of the crusading army. I'm just an ordinary soldier. I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve to be king. But also that at the time it's like, I don't deserve to be still an imposter. It's like, it's sort of like a psychological defense of, it's sort of like a psychological defense against what happened. That he's like, oh, I'm just an ordinary soldier, not in sort of denial of what happened. But then also I think we got to the I am the Reaper, I took the friends to Neverworld. That it might be a reference, obviously, just the idea that he killed, that he thinks he's the responsibility for the death of his parents. Well, not his parents, obviously. I don't know if he has their parents, of his soldiers, his troops. But also, might be a reference to Thanatos, which is another word for the death instinct from Freud, who actually started thinking of this idea of the death instinct and melancholia, largely due to the death, I think, of surviving and blaming himself and having the guilt for someone else. So that the idea, the death instinct is that we desire the death of, it's more desire the death of ourselves, that we desire to turn to the origin, but also that we just sort of an aggressive instinct as well. I haven't fully looked at it. I just saw that in an article more that it's sort of that there's something connected to that to survivor's guilt. But let's continue. So, this is one of the best riffs. This is honestly might be the best, or at least one of the best vocal riffs. I think Biken's theme just has the best instrumental riff, but this is so good. But basically, my people, where were we at? Let's just skim back. Let's skim. Oh yeah, the right side of history. Will I be on the right side of history? I mean, look at what he was doing. He was doing things that were fundamentally, both that he thinks that, well, am I the right side of history because I let my troops die? And is the Illyrian army of the Knights of the Holy Crusades fighting? Are they actually doing the right thing? Because throughout this whole song, we see there's no blame. He doesn't. He has moral injury many times is caused. This is why this is more survivor's guilt, not just moral injury itself. Because moral injury itself will actually more be caused by killing other people, by when one's moral consciousness realizes, wait, why am I killing people in a war? He has no remorse for the deaths of the people he's fighting in this war. Except that then there's this little thing of, will I be on the right side of history? Will I be on the right side of history because, wait, am I... Now there's a little bit of moral trauma that circles back and influences everything else in the song, that he's also killed other people. It's not just survivor's guilt. It's that he's also realized, wait, I've killed people as well. And that's not good either. So, but then he's like, no. Then he starts, but then he gets into then the best riff comes in. It's like, then the berserk, then you sort of like hear this heightened stress and tension and testosterone coming through. And he's like, no, it doesn't matter. I don't care that I'm killing people. I don't care. And he goes like full berserker mode in the high heat and tension. It's just, and they turn that into, I think, into a major key. And it sounds so good.
Bring it on, you bastard! Bring it on, bastard! I'll never call him down!
It doesn't matter. No, he's resolved to kill them all. Anyway.
Bring it on, bastard!
Yeah, the song does not have a good resolution. It doesn't. I mean, Leo, we know, is fine on the surface, at least. Leo, please. All right. This was a very different, interesting analysis. Hope you enjoyed me attempt to do clinical psychology. This is not my absolute specialty, but I did my best. and I hope you all enjoyed it. All right, next, Guilty Gear song is Suki no Shihai and Worthless as the Sun Under the Clouds, which is our Raven's themes from Guilty Gear 2 Overture and Guilty Gear XR Revelator. And then after that, I believe we're going to do Nagori Yuki's themes. I believe we are. I'm excited for that. And then also in the intermediate time, I will get to Must Die eventually. And there's also currently a poll out. If you want, BlazBlue wise, do you want Noel Vermillion / Mew 12's vocal themes, or do you want Bang Shishigami's vocal themes? Vote for that if you're into BlazBlue. All right. This has been David Lewis of Philosophy Video Game Philosophy. Peace.